Live.
Okay, we are now live, Chairman.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the meeting of the Northern Planning Committee. I am Councillor Paul Wynne, Chair of the committee. This meeting is being live streamed so members of the public can hear the audio of the meeting and view the papers shown on the screen. If any committee members experience technical difficulties during the meeting, please contact IT on the number you already have. Please mute your microphones unless asked to speak and remute after speaking. Unless the chat function, use the chat function to indicate you want to speak, but nothing else, because the debate has to be heard by those listening to the audio feed. Members should ensure they are present throughout the meeting, as you cannot vote on any item if you've not heard all the debate. As Chair, I will interpret the Council's existing standing orders in light of the requirements of the remote participation, with advice from the monitoring officer prior to making a ruling. At the start of the meeting, I will ask members of the committee to confirm their presence and any disclosable pecuniary interests. Can members and officers introduce themselves each time before they speak, so those listening know who is speaking? Okay, we shall do the roll call now. Members must disclose any pecuniary interest, any matters to be discussed which is not included in the register of interest, and leave the meeting by turning off the camera, muting their microphone prior to the matter being discussed. We'll do the roll call now. Roy Aldercroft.
Yes, I'm present, Chair, and I have no pecuniary interests.
Councillor Nicholas Bardsley.
Present, Chairman, no pecuniary interests. I'm Councillor for Ryton and Christchurch.
Thank you. Councillor Gerald Dakin.
Present. I have no pecuniary interest to declare.
Thank you. Pauline Dee's next, but she's given her apologies. Julian Dean is standing in for her, so that'll come on the apologies of item 1, but I will call out Julian Dean because I know he's there.
Yeah, present and nothing to declare. Thank you.
Councillor Nat Green.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Vince Hunt.
Present and no declarations.
Councillor Mark Jones.
Yeah, I'm present. I'm the elected member for Caboyne, Salatin and Western Wren, and I've nothing to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Pamela Mosley.
Present and nothing to declare. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keith Roberts.
Yeah, President Chair, I just wanted it recorded for item 6 that I'm a member of Shrewsbury Town Council and a member of their planning committee.
Thank you, David. Keith rather. Councillor David Besmere.
Present and nothing to declare.
Thank you. And myself, nothing to declare. Okay, please can the officers now confirm their presence? Planning officers, solicitors and committee officer, please.
Philip Mullen, Principal Planner.
Kelvin Hall, Principal Planner.
Miranda Garrard, Solicitor.
Shelley Davis, Committee Officer.
Thank you very much. I shall now turn to the items on the agenda. Item 1, apologies. Are there any apologies? Which we know there are. Thank you.
Yes, Chairman, it's Committee Officer Shelley Davis. There's been apologies received from Councillor Pauline D, and Councillor Julian Dean is substituting.
Thank you very much, Shelley. Item 2, to confirm the minutes of Northern Planning Committee held on the 10th of November 2020. I move the minutes of the previous Northern Planning Committee meeting held on the 10th of November 2020 as circulated be signed as a correct record. Can I have a seconder, please?
Councillor Keith Roberts, I'll second it.
Thank you, please. I will accept these minutes as a true record unless anyone else indicates differently. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Okie dokie. Item 3, public question time. Committee officer.
There are no public questions.
Thank you very much. Item 4, disclosable pecuniary interest. This has been dealt with during the initial roll call of the meeting. Whoops. Turning to substantive items, the planning officer will present the item, then we'll deal with the public speaking part of the meeting, then open to the members of the committee to debate. Item 5, land north of Green Lane Farm, Abbey Green, Wixall, Shropshire. Erection of one local needs dwelling with detached double garage. Thank you. I think, Philip, you're presenting this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application is for the erection of one local needs dwelling with a detached garage and represents a resubmission of a previous application for a dwelling on site refused permission in accordance with the council's scheme of delegation on land north of Green Lane Farm, Abbey Green, Wixall. Members' attention is drawn to the update sheet and the reason for refusal, which was missed from the top of the report. I'll read it out. Wixall, the applicant has demonstrated that she is in local housing need. The siting of the dwelling is considered contrary to planning policies and deemed unacceptable. The proposed siting of the dwelling house will adversely affect the landscape and the rural character of the area. The proposed development would be exposed and visible from the passing highway, and due to the open nature of the site, the dwelling will have a clear, prominent position within the rural setting and is therefore not considered acceptable due to the visual impact and harm caused. The proposed dwelling is located on land in the control of Yew Tree to the north of Green Lane Farm. Yew Tree house itself is Grade 2 listed dwelling, located to the northwest of the site and is also a small farm. To the north of this property is Abbey Green Farm. Otherwise, there are no other dwellings or farmsteads within sight of the application site, which is surrounded by agricultural land. First slide is context plan indicating the makeup of the surrounding landscape. The application site is outlined in red, and you'll see the Abbey Green Farm to the north, Yew Tree Cottage to south of that, which is also a small farmstead, and alongside the site Green Lane Farm. And next plan, please. This indicates the block plan indicating the proposed two-storey detached dwelling and garage alongside. Next plan, please. This is a wider area plan showing the wider area in which the site is located in. It's very rural and agricultural, and as you can see, a matrix of fields with farmsteads dotted around, and further to the west you'll see some houses alongside the public highway. Next slide, please. This is the proposed elevations. It complies with the local needs criteria for 100 square meters internal floor space, and as members can see, it's a two-storey detached dwelling using the roof space for the bedroom accommodation. Next slide, please. The floor plans, as I've indicated, are over 2 stories. Next slide, please. Application proposes a double bay detached garage alongside, and if you're wondering what they are on the roof, solar panels. Next slide, please. As there now follows a number of photographs of the site and the surrounding area. Now, Yew Tree house itself, which I referred to earlier, is the farm where the land is connected to. That is a Grade 2 listed dwelling. The farm buildings are to the rear of the site, the house up along the road junction. Next slide, please. All right, then this is the field where the dwelling is proposed, elevated in the surrounding landscape. You'll see the sheep are actually standing on the site, and to the side is the adjacent farmstead I touched on earlier. Next slide, please. This is the public highway to the north of the site. Next slide. Again, views to the south of the site and the public highway leading in the opposite direction. Next slide. The site frontage with the adjacent public highway, which will result in some loss of native hedgerow vegetation in order to create visibility displays for the access into the site. Next slide. This is Green Lane Farm to the south of the site and the nearest property to the application site. Next slide. Well, Green Lane Farm here, and then the final photograph on here shows land across the land lane to the west of the site. There are no statutory objections to this application. One letter of objection from members of the public, and members will note Wixall Parish Council support the application. In conclusion, Wixall, the housing officer, is satisfied with the applicant's housing needs. Officers do not consider the application site forms part of any recognised settlement. The immediate area to the site being typical of rural Shropshire with dotted farmsteads. There are no private dwellings within sight and sound of the site, which are typical and usually a sign of a settlement. It has been mentioned that Wixall is a loose-knit settlement. Members' attention is drawn to the diagrams in the SPD on single plot affordable housing and the diagram of an example of a loose-knit settlement, which does show how a loose-knit settlement can be more spread out with private dwellings as well as farmsteads. As I've touched on in this presentation, there are no private dwellings within sight or sound of this application site. Only the 3 farmsteads are the nearest to it. Also, there is an aerial photograph as part of the report, which members will have in front of them. The site area is known as Abbey Green. Officers are of the opinion this is not part of a recognised settlement, and further still, as indicated, no private dwellings within sight and sound. Further still, officers consider the siting will have a visual impact owing to the conspicuous elevated location of the site in the surrounding landscape. The recommendation is therefore one of refusal for the reason I read out earlier, as the application is considered contrary to policies CS5, CS6, CS17, MD02, MD07A and MD13 of the Shropshire Core Strategy and the SAMDEV plan, along with the aims of the National Planning Policy Framework and types and the Council's SPD on types and affordability of housing. And as indicated, the recommendation is one of refusal. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Philip. Any public speakers on this matter have submitted written statements to be read out in accordance with the revised procedure for public speaking. The local member may read out their own or may have elected for the solicitor to also read out theirs. Can the solicitor read out any statements, please?
Thank you, Chair. The local member for this one, Councillor Mellings, I believe, has elected to read his own. I think he is present, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Mellings, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman. I'm present.
Thank you, Chris. So, there you go.
Thank you very much indeed. Chairman, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the committee today in support of this application. The parish of Wixall is essentially a scattered collection of settlements and hamlets rather than a single settlement. A description of Wixall says, within the parish boundaries encompassing 7 square miles are various hamlets including Abbey Green, Hollinwood, Welsh End, Stanley Green, Dobson's Bridge, Far End and Waterloo. Abbey Green is a distinct area of Wixall running from Yew Tree House through to Holly Farm, forming a loose-knit linear settlement pattern either side of the road. Abbey Green is clearly indicated on the OS map and forms part of the postal address of properties making up Abbey Green. The proposed location is in a concentrated part of the settlement between Toad Hall and Abbey Green Farm. It is not detached, so the residential precedence is already set. Based on the current edition of the Type and Affordability of Housing SPD 2012, the application is consistent with policy as set out in paras 5.14, 5.15, 5.16 and 5.17. A quote, 5.15, each case is treated on its merits, but the following guidelines apply when assessing whether a small hamlet constitutes a recognisable named settlement. A settlement always comprises a group of houses occupied by households from different families. The group becomes a settlement due to the number and proximity of the houses in the group. Although a matter of judgment in each case, particularly for settlements where the number is small or where the houses are dispersed, for example, strung along a road, it is the combination of these two factors that determines whether the dwellings constitute a settlement. 5.16 says, recognisable settlements are also characterised by how local people refer to them, by a place name that is shared by a number of dwellings. This might not necessarily be reflected in the postal address. It will usually, but not always, be named on the Ordnance Survey map. Whether a site is in a recognisable settlement will be influenced by the character of the settlement as set out in paragraph 5.17 of the policy. The views of the local Shropshire Council member about whether the site is in or adjoining a recognisable settlement as required by core strategy policy CS11 will be canvassed by the case officer at the pre-application stage to enforce their professional judgment. The case officer may seek the views of the parish council for additional assistance in cases where it is a finely balanced judgment. 5.17 says, because a settlement is a relationship between different properties, the limits of the settlement are defined by where the relationship peters out. This varies from settlement to settlement, depending on a number of factors. For example, a site a short distance from a loose-knit settlement may be considered adjoining, while a similar distance in a tightly clustered settlement would not be. Larger settlements also have a wider pull or sphere of influence than small settlements, influencing the relationship between a site and the settlement. The design and scale of the proposed dwelling is appropriate and does not adversely affect either the landscape or rural character of the area. The proposal is in accordance with policies CS5, 6, 17, MDO2, MDO7A and MD13 of the Shropshire Core Strategy and SAMDev Plan. There is development both sides of the road and it would not result in sporadic or isolated development. The application is suitably designed and meets evidenced housing need. All requirements of the policy are met and members will be aware of the context in which the single plot exception policy was originally introduced to help meet housing need in rural areas. The proposal is similar to and consistent with previous applications under the affordable policy in Wixall at Chapel Lane, Brownsbrook and Sandybank, at Quinebrook and Pool Head in Wen Rural, and in Crickmary near Stoke-on-Tern, all of which have received planning approval. This application is no different. The application is also supported by the Parish Council, the two closest neighbours, and there have been no local objections. The Planning Services Manager has previously said that, and I quote, planning is a matter of judgment and interpretation, unquote. In planning terms, this application would appear to meet both the spirit and letter of the Council's current policy. I fully support the application And given why the policy was established in the first place, I would ask the committee to approve it. Many thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mellings. Miranda, we have another one, don't we? I think.
Thank you, Chair. Miranda Garrod, Solicitor. Yes, we have a submission from Suzanne Whitley, the applicant, and she says, "Thank you for the opportunity to address you this afternoon to ask you to support my application for a local need dwelling. I have been on this journey for 18 months in pursuit of an affordable home to house myself and my daughter, allowing me to continue to care for my elderly parents. Further to receiving continued support from the Parish Council and local member who have urged me to continue to pursue this application, I am delighted that it can be heard at committee. As a single mum, looking after my elderly parents and holding down a job, I am excited at the opportunity that Shropshire Council's Build Your Own Affordable Home affords. I am enthusiastic about the community of Wixall and I have been overwhelmed with the support I have received. The insistence by the development management team that this application is contrary to policy conflicts with the guidance afforded within Shropshire type and affordability of housing SPD of what constitutes a suitable site. Whilst Wixall is not your typical settlement, Abbey Green alongside Hollinswood, Welsh End, Stanley Green, Dobson's Bridge, Far End and Waterloo are several hamlets forming Wixall. This has been something supported by the local parish council and local member, and I refer to paragraphs 5.15 to 5.17 in the SPD, where the spirit of this policy clearly looks to view proposals for rural affordable housing positively and by no means provides a definitive definition. As illustrated by the location plans, my home would adjoin the neighbouring property of Green Lane Farm and complements the spatial pattern of nearest properties. Whilst the proposed reasons for refusal suggest the impact on the landscape and rural area, I am of the opinion that this is not the central issue. Rather, the issue is if the site is a suitable location. Other self-build affordable homes in and around Wixall are similar in their spatial relationship to neighbouring properties. And as the policies considered in granting planning for those are still the same being considered now, I struggle to understand the officer's differing interpretation for this application. Please be aware that I am willing to move the property further back on the plot and or reduce the levels and amend the design to reduce the impact when viewed from the road if members feel this would address concerns. However, could I please ask you to consider the pivotal issue of this application, the suitability of its location, recognising that the suitability of this location is a matter of judgment and interpretation. Having had my housing need confirmed by the Council's Housing Enabling Team, and after careful consideration of the policies and guidance surrounding, I am hopeful that you could support my application, thus allowing a modest, affordable home to be built. It's the end of that statement, Chair, and we have no further statements on this matter.
Thank you, Miranda. Right. Does the planning officer wish to clarify any points in response?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In response to the local members' comments, I'd like to emphasise in officers' opinions, policy CS11 of the Shropshire Core Strategy is the key policy in relation to this application, and it refers to single plot affordable housing alongside recognised settlements. Officers do not consider the settlement concerned of Abbey Green to be a recognised settlement, and as the member pointed out in his presentation, it is a hamlet. It's a hamlet. If it is a hamlet, there's no individual separate dwellings, as I've pointed during my presentation, to simply farmsteads. Thank you.
Oh, right. Thank you for that. I'll now open the debate for the committee to please indicate on the chat function if you wish to speak. The solicitor will let me know who's next to speak.
Thank
Can
you,
I just
Chair.
kick off to oh, sorry, Miranda.
Apologies, Chair.
No. Can I just start just before we start and take anybody else or put my hand up or whatever? I know you should use the chat function. I apologise for that. No, just going back to the officers going on about farmsteads. Yes, they were farmsteads and there were small holdings. Wixall is full of them. Now they've been taken up by residents, and farming as such is not happening in those farmsteads as far as I can see. I've been there, I've had a look. I just wanted to clarify that they are not farmsteads as we know them or used to know them. They are private houses which don't farm, basically. Okay, carry on.
Mr. Chair, through you, please.
Yeah.
Can I ask the slides that they put back to the site location so that assist members with their consideration, please? Thank you. That's the one.
Okay, Chair, the first indication is from Councillor Mosley.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mosley.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually 3 questions, if you don't mind. One, just procedurally, we had the applicant speak, putting their case. I believe that applicants only spoke in response to an objector, which we didn't have before us today. That's my first question. Second one, perhaps the case officer could answer this, but they may not be able to. I believe there's no changes to the previous application with this one. I'm just wondering why they've submitted an identical application rather than simply go to appeal. And the third one, just the comments that were made by the applicant that they're willing to move it or reduce levels. We can only consider, I think, coming not what is before us today, not what may happen in the future. It's a full application, so we have to consider what is before us today, I believe. Could you please answer those 3 questions?
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Can I defer to the solicitor on the first question, please? The second question in relation to the identical application, that is correct. It is an identical application to the previous one refused under the scheme of delegation. There also was a earlier application in front of Yew Cottage, which was also refused under the scheme of delegation. And in relation to the third question, yes, you're correct in your thinking, Councillor.
About the application in front of us, yeah?
Through you, Chair, Miranda Garrard, solicitor speaking. In relation to the first question, Councillor Mosley is correct generally, but this is the applicant gets to speak in response to a recommendation of refusal. Normally, if there's an objector, it's when there's a recommendation for approval, and if there's no objector, then the applicant doesn't get to speak, but this is different due to the recommendation.
Thank you, Miranda. Let's clear that up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, the next indication is from Councillor Bardsley.
Okay, Councillor Bardsley.
Thank you, Chairman. Can we just explore, and I think this is one for Philip, why paragraph 6.2.4 in the officer's report, it's explicitly suggested that an appropriate location would be within the domestic curtilage of Yew Cottage. Now, I don't understand that, because that is a listed building, and I would have thought the first thing the officers would have said if this application were submitted in that location, that it was inappropriate to have a building of this sort, and obviously it's scaled down, it's got to be an affordable dwelling, and it would inevitably surely be within the curtilage of a listed building. So I just don't understand that bit. Perhaps Philip could explain that. I'm genuinely puzzled as to how a dwelling of this sort, given that it is, you know, it's a small scale affordable dwelling, it can't be, you know, built to look like a listed building or anything like that. How is that going to fit within the curtilage of a listed building?
Philip.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Members will see the location plan up in front of them, and Yew Cottage, which, as the council quite rightly points out, is a grade 2 listed building. I think that's a typing error on behalf of the case officer. What she's referring to is within the farmstead curtilage. The applicants currently reside in a large caravan on site, which I understand has not got planning permission, and she's referring to that site as it would have a better relationship with surrounding built development. That is to the south of the curtilage of Yew Tree Cottage, as on the plan before you, which is obviously on opposite side of the road to the application site. Is that clear?
It sorry, may I just come back, Chair? Could Philip just explain where the preferred site would be? Because if it's not within the curtilage of Yew Tree Cottage, where is it?
It's to the south of the curtilage as shown on the plan there of Yew Tree Cottage. There's a caravan lying back off the highway to the side alongside the path. There's a marked footpath. Well, it's to the north of that. As the applicant herself has horses in stables, and you'll notice the menage to the rear, and then her parents live in Yew Tree Cottage. They have farm livestock which make use of the other buildings.
So even though it's very, very close to Yew Tree Cottage, it's deemed not to be within the curtilage.
Yew Tree Cottage would have a garden curtilage. To put it within the garden curtilage would be unacceptable by officers. However, over time, there's farm buildings being built in the area around Yew Tree Cottage itself, and this includes a number of stables. They would be interject in between the dwelling known as Yew Tree Cottage and where a possible site for the dwelling could be, which is where the caravan itself is located and has been, I understand, for some time.
Sorry, I don't want to labour the point, Chair, but could Philip just indicate exactly where the caravan is?
I haven't got. Is my mouse? Can you see where I'm not presenting the slides. It would have to be. Yeah, that's right. Where the arrow is now, that is where the caravan is located.
And that's not within the curtilage of Yew Tree Cottage?
Not within the domestic curtilage. However, as this is a traditional farmstead, the original farm buildings would also form part of the curtilage to Yew Tree Cottage. However, beyond these buildings have been erected over a period of time a number of stables and horse associated paraphernalia. Therefore, that would act as a buffer, and it would be, in officers' opinion, a dwelling built here would have no more serious impact on the setting of Yew Tree Cottage than the existing. The first application, as this is the third application for this local needs dwelling, was on land in front of Yew Tree Cottage. On that site there, and the land is edged in blue, the conservation officer was concerned about the impact on the setting of the listed building, which is a black and white cottage, which was shown during the photograph presentation.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Chairman. That's a lot clearer.
Thank you, Councillor Bardsley.
Chair, the next indication is from Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hunt here. I'm listening to this with interest. Obviously, as Vice Chair, we've been through this with officers. I have to say personally struggling with this a bit. I do understand the arguments that the officers put forward, but I was also one of the councillors, and I'm not sure how many of us were here when we actually put this policy in place to allow for just this sort of thing. And I remember what the spirit of that was. I think it was Jake Berryman at the time who did most of the work on this sort of thing.
Sorry, Councillor Hunt.
Wretched thing.
Wretched. Yeah.
Sorry, my phone rang in the middle. Nothing I can do about that. I hung up on whoever it was. It hinges on two things. First of all, the fact that it's not accepted to be a settlement. Although, having just listened to officers talking, I don't really understand that, because we've just said that if they moved it to behind the stables, then it would be perhaps more in line with policy. So in a way that kind of bats out the park for me, the whole settlement idea, because if you can put it one side of the road and that's okay, but the other side isn't okay, then to me that's almost accepting at a professional level that it is considered, albeit a long stringy settlement. And we're also going to do a load of spiel about how Wixall's different from anywhere else in Shropshire, and that by the nature of how the people lived and what they did, and they were very small plots with 4 or 5 cows, and I think a lot of them used to dig peat many years ago. It is what it is. It's fairly unique, and I do think within policy there is the ability to be a little bit flexible, because as was clearly indicated earlier, some settlements are more condensed than others, and this is a long stringy settlement. So I get that. The other thing is really about the placement in a prominent position, in elevated position. I guess really that's it's close enough, but it's the nicest place to build a house. This is one of those, I think, as Councillor Bardsley indicated, a site visit would have been very useful, because we're told it is an elevated site, but how elevated is it? How much would it stick out? I mean, it strikes me that the applicant has a registered need that's supported by council officers in the social housing department. There is a need there for her to be able to help look after her aging parents, which surely comes at a cost saving to the council. Oh, somebody's being persistent. Sorry about that. So I get all of that and I understand that. I just really would like Philip to talk a little bit more, because I now consider this to be an accepted settlement, because it would be more appropriate, as shown by Mouse, for it to be built in a slightly different place. But I want to focus therefore perhaps a little bit more, Philip, if you can, on why officers believe that this elevated site would be too elevated and would present harm in amongst all the other buildings and farm buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Philip, could you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To be clear, officers do not consider this a recognised settlement. However, what officers looking at with the site alongside the buildings there was the reason for refusal of this, as well as not being a recognised settlement, is the landscape and visual impact. From a landscape and visual impact point of view, officers consider the site alongside Yew Tree Cottage would be less conspicuous in the landscape. The site itself is a slight rise in the local topography of that particular field in which the site is located in. It's also considered isolated from other buildings. There is obviously Green Lane to the side. It's a the farmhouse dwelling of Green Lane Farm, which is the nearest to the site, and its buildings are to the other side, and obviously one to the rear. I can't, unless the officer doing the slides would like to go back to the photograph of the site to try to give you some indication of what it looks like in the surrounding landscape. As I agree, a site visit here would have been beneficial. That's the first one showing there's the site there. There's a slight rise on the site itself, and it goes down to the adjoining fields in all directions from that site. You can see where the sheep are standing, and then the site itself would be where their sheep crutch is. If you'd like to go to the roadside photographs, please, so that indicates the rise of there as well. Like there's a steep ditch there, the one side the hedge, that is on the road leading from the site though. Next slide, and that is to the south of the site. And the next one, please. Right, there's the road frontage of the site from where access into the site will be obtained. I have nothing else to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just going back, I went there with the officers it does rise up on that plot. It would be better if it was settled down more. There'd be less impact on the area. But as Councillor Mosley said, it's what's in front of us at the moment. Okay, Miranda.
The next indication is Councillor Dakin.
Councillor Dakin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very familiar with Wixall. I've known it all my life, and I spent a great deal of time in Wixall. It's very, very different for most villages and settlements in Shropshire. It is a parish that consists of loads of little settlements. One of them would be Waterloo, Stanley Green, Hollingwood, Dobson's Bridge, Post Office Lane. They're all small areas, all belonging to Wixall, which is a huge, geographically a huge parish. Now, I think what's been asked for here is not unusual. I don't think we've had sites like this, probably not quite as barren as this before, but this certainly looks as if it's a great site to build on. And I know it's on a little bit of a rise there, but this can be covered by some good landscaping with trees, etc. And I see no reason why it shouldn't happen. The officers have said that the need is there, and I think the need is there for the lady to look after her aged parents. And this seems the right site to put that dwelling on. And I can support it. I've supported some sites like this before. I'm thinking of one now at Steel Heath, just outside Tilstock. Also, there's some at Priest, 2 or 3 sites just leaving Priest down Green Lane Bank. Sorry, not Green Lane Bank, past the church.
Yeah.
And I think this is an ideal site, and I think for what it's for, a person's dwelling, a special purpose dwelling, and I think it's ideal, and I would go for that. And can I make an amendment? Can I make a recommendation that I propose this site is given permission?
Can we just finish the debate, but I shall come to you first for recommendation, okay? We'll finish the debate first, but I'll come back to you. All right, Councillor Dakin?
Thank you.
Okie dokie.
The next indication, Chair, is Councillor Aldcroft.
Thank you, Councillor Aldcroft.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm trying to look at this like the guy on the number 49 bus. And I find they certainly take an effective, what you might call a subjective view. There are 2 interpretations of different rules of planning policy. And again, that's subjective. But in the complex of or the setting of this build your own type of situation in a rural area, I do think that with the support of the community and the local member, and the fact that we're meeting a rural housing need with this, the impact, I'm a little lost on the impact of this. It's not as if people are rushing down there to see the countryside and the grade 2 listed buildings. In fact, that road would probably be found by myself, and I'd probably never get off it again. But when we're looking at impact, this is somebody who's currently living in a caravan, wants to stay in the local area, and as I say, has community support as well as member support, and appears to comply with affordable housing policies. So as far as I'm concerned, there isn't a question on this one. I would be prepared to support Councillor Dakin when that proposal comes forward.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Landcroft. Any more speakers, Miranda?
Chair, there are two more speakers, Councillors Vasmer and Jones, but may I just through you briefly make a point with regard to what Councillor Aldcroft just said, as he just said it. I do think it's a slight legal nicety I just must point out, if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. It's just Councillor Aldcroft mentioned that the interpretation of planning policy is subjective, and I must just point out it's actually not. The interpretation of planning policy is a matter of law. The plan says what it says, and there is a right answer to that. What is a matter of judgment, as has been referred to, is the application of that policy. So firstly, you must understand what the policy says, which you've had it. In fact, it's in the officer report and it was read out to you within the submission from Councillor Mellings. So we need to think about whether this is a settlement in accordance with what the SPD says. That there is the judgment. So first you must understand the policy, then you must apply it, and the application is the matter of judgment. I think it's just important distinction to be clear about. And there are two aspects to that policy, of course, the location and then the personal housing need of the individual, and both of those aspects need to be considered for themselves. Thank you, Chair. As I said to you, the next indication is Councillor Vasmer.
Thank you for that, Miranda. Councillor Vasmer.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to back up the previous speakers really in saying that I do believe that we should be allowing this application. One, it's for affordable housing, which I think is very, very sparse in rural areas and is desperately needed. Secondly, I do not agree with the officer's interpretation of the location. I mean, even looking at the screen, the photos we've got in front of us, you can see the farm in the background of that photo. And so I don't think that this development would be exposed and would be a prominent feature of the landscape. There are other properties around, and I think that that there are eminent reasons for this to be approved, which Councillor Mellings outlined in his submission. So therefore, I'd like to back the proposal I think Councillor Dakin is going to make, and think we should approve this planning application.
Thank you, Councillor Vasmer. Will Councillor Jones now?
That's right, Chair.
Thank you. Are you Mark, you there? You might be on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I'm very much minded with my fellow councillors that we do need some more buildings in the rural area, and I think we should be very sympathetic to this, especially someone who's willing to help their parents and look after their parents. I think we need to look at it seriously and help them. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
There are no more oh, I beg your pardon, Chair. Another indication, Councillor Green.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've been listening to the debate. A couple of points. I mean, clearly the matter rests on two key factors. One is whether the settlement, whether this is indeed a settlement, and two, its practical impact upon the upon the visual impact of the site. I think the first is where the officers are strongest, and because looking at the visual impact, I'm quite sure that a good planting scheme around it would do very well. Coming back to the issue of whether it's a settlement or not, unfortunately in Shropshire we have been repeatedly honouring this in the breach. I'm thinking of an application in Cruckton where we've had a very similar argument and committee went with it. I have to say I have a lot of sympathy for officers because they need to be drawing a line somewhere and have to follow what their definition of a settlement is, and clearly they've made a decision in this case. I have absolute sympathy with the applicant here, but I am also minded that
until we've actually rewritten our planning guidance on what constitutes a settlement, this is starting to get very flabby indeed as to what our settlement policy is. And so I have to say, on this particular instance, I would very reluctantly, and I say this genuinely because you tend to hear this quite often on planning committees, very reluctantly I'd have to follow the officers. And until we've got a much stronger guidance, perhaps, or should we say even more relaxed guidance, perhaps, on what constitutes development in our rural areas. If this is not officially a settlement, then it's outside of the settlement boundary, and we must follow those rules. So I'm afraid I will be following the officer's recommendation on this occasion, but I think this is something that we really must look at as to, you know, what it is that we want in our countryside in terms of development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Some very good points brought up there. Thank you for that.
Councillor Dean is indicating, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Dean.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief. It's just sort of reflections on the discussion and in response to Councillor Green, I suppose. I think I'm probably minded to support this because I think that Councillor Hunt has given a convincing argument that there are exceptional reasons for accepting this as a settlement over and above the way the officers have interpreted that, and that seems to me to be a reasonable argument. There's historical reasons for accepting that, and that's an interpretation that I think I'm comfortable with. What I'm not comfortable with is a couple of the comments about we need more buildings in the countryside. So you know that was a bit of an alarm bell, to be honest. But having said that, I think I'm happy to support this on the basis of Councillor Hunt's remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Is that it, Miranda?
Currently, no more indications, Chair.
Right. Thank you. Are there any points that the planning officer or solicitor wishes to clarify?
Not at present, Chair.
Nothing further from me, Mr. Chair.
Miranda, no?
No, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, if there are no more speakers, please can I have a proposer and seconder? I'm going back to Councillor Dakin, as I promised. Councillor Dakin? Gerald? You could be on mute, Gerald.
Sorry, I thought I cancelled that. Yeah. Yes, I would like to propose that we accept this site and this application.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder? There was several climbing up. I think Roy was the first.
Councillor Royal-Crofts, I will second that gladly.
Thank you very much. So we have a proposer and seconder.
Just to strengthen that, Chairman, just to say, because I believe that Abbey Green is a settlement.
So that's your reason. Okay. Right. Do we have any other reasons? I'm just trying to preempt anything.
Chair, it's Miranda Garrard, solicitor. Because the report is obviously written as a refusal, members are making a proposal to go against the officer recommendation, so we do just need to capture the reasons. Clearly, Councillor Dakin has indicated that he takes the view, applying the SPD, that Abbey Green is in fact a recognisable named settlement. The other issue raised in the officer report was the visual impact on the landscape. So I'm assuming from Councillor Dakin's recommendation that he takes the view that the visual impact is acceptable, presumably with an appropriate landscaping scheme.
Absolutely, yes.
Furthermore, the recommendation would need to include that appropriate conditions are applied, and that would need to be the usual types of conditions. But you'll note in the report, I think there was a suggestion, should this be granted, that there should be an archaeology condition, and a landscaping condition has been mentioned. I think the planning officer may wish to suggest to you some other proposed conditions. There would also need to be a Section 106 agreement to secure this as an affordable dwelling in perpetuity in accordance with the policy. So I don't know if you want to invite the planning officer if he needs to have some conditions suggested.
Thank you, Miranda. Philip, can you suggest some conditions about landscaping, etc.?
Yes, I accept you could put landscaping on. I'm just checking now to see what highways have said.
So as I remember, I think they were happy with it.
Yeah, they recommend conditions. Can I suggest, if you're mindful to approve, that it's because clearly that section 106 will need to be drawn up here in line with the council policy on affordable housing, and that you delegate the conditions to the finer wording of the conditions to the planning manager based on what the key conditions you suggest are relevant today. But yes, highways would be considered necessary. I note there's also conditions relevant on ecology.
Yeah.
Then the external construction materials of the house. And I would suggest also floor levels because of the rise in the landscape. Thank you.
I was going to suggest that one. Yes. Gerald, are you prepared to take all those on? Those conditions? You're on mute, Gerald.
Yes, quite happy, Chair.
And Roy?
Yes, quite happy with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Miranda and Philip, with that. Miranda, is that okay?
I think so. We appear to have the reason clear and also proposed conditions delegated to the planning services manager for the final wording in a 106 agreement to secure the dwelling as affordable.
Thank you for your help there, Miranda. Okay, there's nothing else. So we will now take the vote. The solicitor will read out the names of the committee, members present and entitled to vote, and then confirm the result of the vote.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Members, you've heard the proposal, the reasons with conditions on 106. I will ask you if you're for or against, please. Councillor Aldcroft?
For.
Councillor Bardsley?
For.
Councillor Dakin?
For.
Councillor Dean?
For.
Councillor Green?
Against.
Councillor Hunt?
For.
Councillor Jones?
For.
Councillor Mosley?
Against.
Councillor Roberts?
Against.
Councillor Vasmer?
For.
Councillor Wynne?
For.
Councillor Chair, there are 8 for and 3 against, so that is carried.
Thank you for that. Okay, confirm the outcome. So we just heard the outcome. That has been passed. So now we can go on to item 6, Hencote Farm, Cross Hill, Shrewsbury. Change of use of land for the erection of 26 holiday lodges and provision of parking area and associated landscaping. Can the planning officer present this item, please? I think it's Kelvin.
Thank you, Chair. Kelvin Hall, Principal Planner. This is an application for change of use of land for the erection of 26 holiday lodges and provision of parking and associated landscaping at Hencote Farm in Shrewsbury. Before I start, I would just like to recommend that the landscaping condition 5, which is at the end of the committee report, is amended to require that a landscaping scheme is submitted for approval, as the current submitted details need to include greater clarity. At present, it refers to the landscaping to be carried out in accordance with the submitted plans. Next slide, please. So the site is located at Hencote Winery and Vineyard in a countryside location to the north of Shrewsbury Town Centre. The site also includes 10 glamping units which were permitted a few years ago. The proposed area for the proposed lodges is shown in red on these plans. You see the main residential areas in the vicinity are to the east, the Mount Pleasant area, Herringate to the southeast, and the recently constructed Winnie Hill View which you can see on the bottom plan there, just to the south of where it says Hencut. I should also point out that yesterday Cabinet approved the pre-submission version of the Shropshire Local Plan, and this includes a proposed housing allocation of 450 houses on land to the south of the site. The nearest part of this would be about 20 metres from the red line boundary. This allocation will now be included in the public consultation on the draft plan, but it is at an early stage of the local plan review process. Next slide. This is a more detailed location plan. You'll see there's a house adjoining the site boundary to the east called the White House. The existing glamping units can be seen to the southwest, just outside the red line. The winery and restaurant is right at the western end, just outside the red line. You can see that a road goes through the site. That's the existing site access road, a private access road from Ellesmere Road to the east. Next slide. This is the existing site layout, which shows the contours. It's obviously quite detailed, but you'll see at the top there are two sites proposed. They are on generally flat land, and then the land falls away to the south of that, down a slope, and the vineyard is on this slope on the southwest of this plan. Next slide. So this shows the proposed site layout in relation to the rest of the winery. There will be 3 individual lodge sites. On the top left, there will be 6 lodges. On the northeastern part of the site, there will be 10 family lodges. And then at the southeast side, there will be 10 lodges for couples. Car parking will be in the two areas at the northwest of the site. And then you can see the existing vineyard on the southwest there on the plan. Next slide. This is an aerial view which shows the 3 areas proposed: the collection area, the family luxury area, and then the proposed couples retreat area, which are, as you can see, around the existing glamping pods. Next slide. So these are photos of the 3 sites. The top left is the collection area, where there'll be 6 lodges. Top right will be the family luxury lodges, and then the bottom one is where the smaller lodges for the couples would be. You see the top 2 are on fairly flat ground, and then the bottom one is on a bit of a slope. Next slide. So these are the elevations and floor plans. This is the collection style lodge and the family lodge. There'll be of timber construction, 2 bedroom compartments, a shower and WC, a kitchen, dining and living room, and an external decking area. Next slide. This is the smaller lodge for the couples. This would have a bedroom, a shower and WC, a kitchen, and an external decking area. Next slide. This is the indicative proposed landscaping, and you'll see in green it includes tree and hedge planting in and around the lodges, particularly the lodges on the higher ground at the northern end of the site. There's also a proposed copse, which you can see shaded grey to the northeast of the site, which will be planted between the family lodges and the White House dwelling at the northeast side. Next slide. These two photos, the top one is the view from one of the lodge sites looking towards southwards towards Shrewsbury. You can see the vineyard in the foreground as it falls away down the slope, and the houses, you might just be able to detect the houses of Winnie Hill View to the left, just above the vineyard, and then beyond that the built-up area of Shrewsbury on the horizon. The bottom photo shows the view looking south from the couples area, and on the right-hand photo the view of Shrewsbury town. Next slide. And this is a panorama taken from the one of the areas for the lodges at the top of the site. You can see on the left-hand side one of the existing lodges that's been permitted, and then the vineyard, and then on the right-hand side you can see the winery and the restaurant. So in terms of the main issues, there have been no objections from technical consultees. The main concerns raised by residents and the town council include overdevelopment of the site, visual impact, noise, additional traffic and light pollution. The development will take up a small proportion of the overall site, and the majority of it would remain as use as a winery and vineyard. The units would be of a sufficient distance from the main areas of housing to avoid noise and disturbance. A thick belt of trees will be planted to provide privacy to the White House to the east of the family area. Some of the houses would be visible from, some of the units would be visible from houses and public viewpoints. However, there would be, as you saw on the landscaping plan, tree and hedgerow planting, which will break up views, and officers feel that the rural character of the area would not be significantly affected. There are no objections from the council's highways team regarding the additional traffic. External lighting will be minimal and motion activated, and there'll be no lights within the designated dark areas of the site to avoid ecological disturbance. The Habitats Regulation Assessment in Appendix A concludes that the proposal would not affect the integrity of the Hencock Pool to the north, which is a Ramsar site. In summary, the site is in a relatively sustainable location close to Shrewsbury Town Centre, and planning policies give support for tourism facilities in sustainable locations. It constitutes an expansion of a successful tourist facility, and officers consider that the benefits of this would outweigh any harm, and therefore it's recommended that permission is granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kelvin. Right, can the solicitor read out any public speaking statements, please?
Thank you, Chair. There is a statement from the local member, Councillor Alex Phillips. I believe he'd indicated he hoped to join the meeting, but he isn't with us, I don't believe, and so in that eventuality he asked that I would read it out. So he states, I have considered these proposals in detail. Though I note the economic benefits such a development can bring, I cannot support it. This is because, 1. It is a countryside site, so any extra activity should be limited and subservient to the main agricultural business that takes place on the site. The current 10 glamping units and restaurant could be argued to be subservient, but the 26 units cannot and very much change the nature balance of uses of the site. Noise. Most campsites, glamping sites in Shropshire of a similar or larger scale are not close to residential developments. This is Herongate plus the 8 homes at Winnie Hill View are nearby, and since these plans were originally drawn up, there is a potential new allocation of 450 homes near Hubert Way in the proposed local plan. The impact of noise, amplified by the hillside location, especially late evening, would not be acceptable for nearby large-scale residential estates. Also, the proposed 450 homes will be located closer to the glamping site than other existing significant residential developments. 3. Highways, safety. This will cause a significant increase in turning traffic on a junction that does not have good sight lines and experiences speeding traffic. 4. Highways, congestion. 26 extra units plus the extra personnel needed to support them will generate extra traffic on an already over-congested Ellesmere Road, cause too much turning traffic on a junction that does not have good sight lines and experiences speeding traffic. The proposed local plan recognises this, stating that the 450 homes development near Hubert Way should not be started until the North West Relief Road is completed. Though I am opposed to this development, if the committee do approve it, then I would suggest that a similar condition is used here, and the expansion of glamping facilities proposed here can only take place when the North West Relief Road is completed. 5. Environmental impact. The application notes that there is not a pavement on the side road and no crossing to the pavement on the other side, plus buses are infrequent and there is not a bus stop immediately by the proposed development. Therefore, journeys into town will probably be by car, to the detriment of air quality and an increase in greenhouse gas emissions. 6. Visual impact. The application as it stands will be visible from Winnie Hill View, Herongate and Ellesmere Road. The application says that there will be landscaping and shading, but these were promised for the previous glamping application, and though there is some landscaping and shading, these buildings are still clearly visible from Winnie Hill View, Herongate, Ellesmere View. For the reasons above, I believe the committee should reject this application. Chair, there is also a statement from Andrew Balshaw, who is the agent for the applicant, and he states, "This application has been recommended for approval by the planning officer subject to drainage conditions. The planning officer has responded to the objections raised within the committee report. We will go on to clarify these further. Within 2 years of opening, Hencote Farm has become an extremely successful vineyard and winery, producing internationally recognised award-winning wines from their own crops. This successful family business offers wine tours, tasting evenings, a full restaurant and bar, and a small glamping village in 10 luxury safari tents. The glamping site won silver at the Camping Glamping Holiday Park of the Year at the West Midlands Tourism Awards. The glamping has proved extremely popular with a 90% occupancy with visitors from all over the UK. This application considers 26 additional glamping units split into 3 distinct areas: a couples village nestled into an existing valley to the east of the existing village and behind Winnie Hill, 10 family-sized units to the north of the existing village, and 6 luxury units closer to the winery. Extensive landscaping has been included within the scheme and agreed with the planning officer and the ecology team. An objector comments state that the screening proposed on the existing glamping village has not been installed. This is simply untrue. The screening is planted and will mature over the coming years. A landscape visual impact assessment for the new villages has been carried out. This considered views from all accessible vantage points around the application site. During the current pandemic, staycation holidays and breaks have become more important, with more people opting for breaks in the UK. This facility will be flexible, allowing overnight, short or weekly stay opportunities year-round, offering more choice of accommodation and boosting Shrewsbury and Shropshire tourism opportunities. The Marches Local Enterprise Partnership have launched their tourism strategy. This application meets the criteria identified in their report. There has been objection to the scale of the development. The proposed and existing glamping will be just % of this 60-acre site. Visibility and impact on the countryside. These are covered by the landscape visual impact assessment. The development will be light touch. Units will be built off timber posts driven into the ground and decked. These could easily be removed and the ground reinstated. Impact on neighbouring dwellings. With the exception of the White House, directly adjacent to the Vineyard Estate, the nearest are Ashfields Road, 250 metres, Herongate, 310 metres, and Winnie View, 350 metres. There will be no overlooking issues. Objectors have mentioned noise at night. Occupants of the units are requested to respect their neighbours, both in adjacent units and in the broader setting as part of the induction. If complaints are made, management will intervene and instruct clients to respect their neighbours. draft local plan. An area below the winery has been identified as potential for 450 dwellings. This should not be considered as the plan is still out for consultation. Highways and Access, Shropshire Council Highways Department have raised no objection. And that's the end of that statement. Thank you, Chair. And there are no further statements. Chair, you're on mute, Chair.
Whoops, my fault. Sorry about that. Does the planning officer wish to clarify any points in response?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members of the committee, can you now comment, please? Can you speak in turn? So, Miranda, are anybody indicating yet?
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Bardsley.
Thank you, Councillor Bardsley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Questions and comments, I'll try to keep them distinct, Chair. First of all, you know, again, it would have been hugely valuable to have walked around the site, but there it is. I can't claim to be hugely familiar with the site, but I have been up there, not recently, but over 2019, I probably paid half a dozen visits. The question relates to the internal driveway, on which I would imagine, and I'm sure somebody will put me right if I've got this wrong, our highways officers wouldn't comment on internal roads within the site. Is that correct? Sorry, that's a question.
Calvin?
Can an officer answer that?
They could do. I don't think that they have done at the present time, but clearly the internal road does have the potential to have an indirect impact upon access onto the highway as well. So they would have looked into certain elements of the internal road when they provided their comments.
Thank you. Kelvin, could you tell us what the width of that road is? I mean, my perception, and it is only a perception, having driven up and down the road a few times, is that it's pretty narrow. And if you look at, I think it was slide 25, could we perhaps just go back to that? That's the one. I mean, that's what I remember is the, you know, the stones, boulders, really keeping traffic onto quite a narrow strip of tarmac. And I suppose my point, Chair, is I would have thought with a lot of additional accommodation, that's going to prove a real bottleneck. I mean, on my visits, you know, and I've been up there to visit the winery and had 2 or 3 meals in the restaurant. If somebody's coming down, you know, somebody coming up, you know, you've got to back up. But what is the width of that internal road? It looks narrow to me. My perception is that it's narrow. And I suppose I'm leading up to the point, if that had to be increased in width, would that require a further application, or is that in some way assumed to be part of this application?
Kelvin.
Thank you, Chair. Kelvin Hall. Yeah, if you can see on the photographs here that it is a single vehicle width road, and you can also see that there are some passing places as well. You can see that on the top left photograph and on the top right one. If we go back to the proposed site layout as well, yeah. Next one. Yeah, this one. You can see just about see the location of the passing places, the quite long passing places. I can pinpoint 1, 2, 3, at least 4 passing places between the car parking area and the Ellesmere Road public highway. So there are well spaced passing places which were approved as part of the previous planning permissions. But yeah, it's a single width access road into the site.
I mean, my point, Chair, is that, you know, that road was designed for a much lower volume of traffic than will be generated if this development is approved. And as I say, I'm grateful to Kelvin. My perception is that it was a single track road, and it clearly is. And my guess is that in practice it'll have to be widened with all the additional traffic that's coming from, you know, the restaurant's been pretty empty for the last 9 months or so. It'll fill up again. It's a very, very large restaurant. Those of us who've been there, it's a very large restaurant, and with what, 26 plus 9, you know, that's a substantial amount of holiday accommodation, all of which has got to go up and down that track. So that was that point. My next question related to the comments in 6.2.5. You know, forgive me, I thought that was a bit ingenuous, really. The suggestion that somehow these lodges are temporary. I mean, again, Kelvin can confirm or otherwise. They will obviously have an electricity supply, yes?
They will need a power supply, yes.
Yeah. And drainage?
There's a toilet and kitchen, so they would need some water supply. Yeah.
Yeah. So there'll be foul water drainage, surface water drainage, electricity supply. Heating will be electric, will it, or will there be a gas supply?
I've seen reference to biomass being used as part of the fuel source.
So, I mean, the fact is, Chairman, that this is a pretty permanent development. I mean, you're not going to go to all that expense. You know, these are not sort of temporary structures. These are going to be long-term holiday accommodation with expensive and quite elaborate, as are required, quite elaborate services attached to each of these items of holiday accommodation. So I think somehow to suggest that they can be removed is, forgive me, a bit misleading. I mean, they're not going to be, if you go into all that expense, providing all those services and accommodation to a pretty high standard, I would guess, this is permanent and not, as the report suggests, in some way temporary. Those were my questions and the points I wanted to make, Chair. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. Just one point. As far as the road goes, it's a private road. Any problems, it's up to the owners of the site to sort out. I would have thought it won't affect the public highway whatsoever. That's just my thoughts. But right, Miranda.
Next speaker indicated is Councillor Green.
Sorry, Kelvin Hall. Can I just respond?
Sorry, Kelvin, if you want to respond on that one? Yeah.
Yeah. Just on the road matter. The road has got very good forward visibility, and therefore I found that it was very easy driving up the site to see whether there was any other car that might be approaching in the opposite direction, and therefore it's quite easy to plan whether or not you might need to use one of the passing places, which are also quite long and could take more than one vehicle. I think just to respond on the point about the permanence, I think the point is that if, for example, the proposal didn't take off as one might, as the owners might hope it does, then rather than leave a lodge there which is not being let, then it could be removed if the demand wasn't there. I don't think there's the intention that it will be a temporary development in any way. It's just that if rather than to leave units there which are not going to be used or occupied, then it could be removed if needs be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Kelvin. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just to apologise and say that I should have mentioned that I'm on the Town Council Planning Committee, but we, twin-hatted members, have a dispensation to come to a different opinion should they so do so. I'd like to start by saying that I fully support the position of the local member. I think what he said has been absolutely spot on. I think this is overdevelopment, and nothing I've seen today would make me change my mind from the position I had when I saw it before. And I'd also like to add that if you with these references to this development of 450 houses to the south, it is pertinent that that development is relies on the construction of the Northwest Relief Road. If that is the case, does not that apply to any other development that takes place along the Ellesmere Road, that it should therefore be dependent on the construction of the Northwest Relief Road? So I think that is a very good point that needs to be raised, that even if we should be minded to approve this application, that we should be very wary about further development along here while the infrastructure is clearly insufficient, and that is what the council's own position at this moment in time, that the road infrastructure is not sufficient for further development. I'd also like to just point out at 6.2.4, I have to take issue where it says that the landscape in which the lodges will be located has no particular quality or landscape value that might differentiate it from other rural countryside location. Well, I beg to differ. Having walked along that area many times and met many local residents who've also walked along that road, it is quite clearly an area where people are very fond of. It's quite a popular walk to walk around there, across the railway and down over to Coton Mount. It is an area of landscape that is valued, and I feel very strongly that some of the comments made on the landscape are a little, shall we say, breezy, to put it mildly. So I have to say I cannot support this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Green.
The next person indicating is Councillor Vasmer.
Okay, Councillor Vasmer.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to firstly ask a question regarding the definition of glamping. Because if you look at our policy, if you look at MD11, section 6 and 7, it makes a clear differentiation between touring caravan and camping sites and static caravans, chalets, log cabins. And following up on what Councillor Barty was saying, these are quite clearly permanent, I would say permanent constructions. And I would say they have more to do with static caravans, chalets, and log cabins than they do to touring caravan and camping sites, in which case they're much higher standards, and I would suggest that this particular development will not meet the standards which are required of static caravans, chalets, and log cabins. I'd just be interested to have the officer's response to that.
Okay, thank you, David. Kelvin.
Thank you, Chair. Kelvin Hall. There's no indication that the application is for a temporary use of land, it's for a permanent use of land. The log cabins will be affixed to the ground. I think there will be, akin to a log cabin kind of structure. The application, though, has been assessed in relation to that particular policy and the need for them to be landscaped and designed to a high quality, and officers are of the view that with the landscaping proposed and to be agreed, and the design of the lodges as well, that they are of a high quality. I just wanted to also go back to the point raised by Councillor Green in terms of the Northwest Relief Road. There is no policy that prevents development along Ellesmere Road from going ahead until the Northwest Relief Road comes about, and of course the Northwest Relief Road has not as yet been approved, and so we would be putting a moratorium on new development if that were the case. There's certainly no policy that prevents something relatively small scale like this particular application compared to a proposed housing allocation of 450 houses from going ahead, and there has been no objection from the highways officer in relation to the additional traffic that would be using the public highway. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Could I just come back, Chair? Is that just for the point?
Okay, go on.
Yep. Just thanks very much to the officers for that response. I'm not supportive of this development, I have to say, and I do believe it constitutes overdevelopment. And one of the things that does worry me about this is the fact that we've had a series of applications on this particular site. If there'd been an application for the development as we now have it, I think there would have been much more concern, but we have a series of smaller applications which have gradually been building up the site into a substantial tourist attraction, and I do worry that this has been possible. And I do think this is overdevelopment, and I do think we should refuse it on this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vesmer. Miranda.
Councillor Mosley, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mosley.
Thank you, Chair. I do know this site well. I used to live just about 4 houses on that end of Herongate, and I used to walk it quite regularly. And I do agree with Councillor Green's comments that it's a very attractive area. People love walking up there, and it's quite derogatory to say it's of a lower landscape value. I think it's very attractive. I agree with comments about overdevelopment, and I also would like to make the comment. I mean, we've been shown the lovely views from the site. Well, when you have a view out, you also have a view in. So something that is gives a lovely view out is also very visible, and we think we need to bear that in mind in this relatively undeveloped area, although obviously the owners have done their best to make it less so. The highway officer haven't raised no objections, but I think highway issues are important here, with another 26 of these accommodations. While it's hoped that people travel by cycle, train, taxi, bus, I think it's fair to say that most people arrive here by car. And there's a dip in the road here, and the actual speed limit changes just when he's slightly going up the bank out of town to 40. But coming in at 40, many vehicles carry on going at 40 into the 30 zone, past the entrance into the Herongate estate. And it really is something where I wouldn't want to see another 26 accommodations vehicles using this on top of what is already there. Just one other comment about the I know lots of residents are concerned about the noise from people socialising late at night. I mean, when people are on holiday, they do tend to be more relaxed and socialise, and in the summer they'll sit outside. I think noise could be an issue here. And I think the comment that management would intervene and ask people to respect their neighbours is actually quite a forlorn hope, I would say. And it wouldn't give me a lot of comfort if I was going to be disturbed by people there. So I can't support this one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Dean, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dean.
Thank you very much. I should also have declared that I'm on the town council planning committee as well. Yeah, I also agree with the local members' comments. My only question, I suppose, is that I struggle with the whole definition of this as a countryside site because of its location. It does feel to me, and again, I know the site. I live on the Ellesmere Road. I've walked this site regularly. It feels to me to be, you know, if we were looking at a proper countryside site and developing a tourism business, then it may well be something that I could support. But this is right adjacent to the town, to where people live, and I think in particular, you know, that couple's retreat. I mean, in terms of noise and impact, is a real threat to local people in a very different way. And I object to the fact that it's sort of that noise is compared to the noise of a playground, which is clearly part of, you know, regular neighbourhood activity and should be welcomed. This is a different sort of impact. So it does feel to me that like overdevelopment, and I think that its adjacence to homes is a real concern for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Is there anybody else, Miranda?
Chair, yes, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hunt here. I'd look upon this one with a degree of interest, I have to say, and I think some of the comments that have been made are very valuable to the debate. I'm not so worried about the internal road. I think it will serve to slow traffic down if they've got to be careful of each other, which can only be safe for any children in the family units there. I'm in two minds with this one. It does kind of smell, I have to say, to me of perhaps of overdevelopment. I would like to have seen fewer units in Hobbiton or whatever it's going to be called. I'm also very conscious of visual 6.2 visual impact landscaping. 6.2.1 planning policies and decisions should contribute and enhance the natural local environment by protecting valued landscapes, sites of biodiversity, geological soils. I guess for me, in a way, this is kind of hinging around, you know, whether we believe this to be enhancing valued landscapes. I'm kind of erring on the side, I have to be honest, of saying that, you know, whilst it's nice to walk there and everything else, it's so close to the edge of town and the road that, and I think there were some comments about the industrial nature of the winery, that perhaps it isn't what I would perhaps consider a valued landscape. Although if it's at the bottom of your garden, anything that's not a building is a valued landscape. I get that. I am a bit concerned about the number of units here, but I'm also very conscious of the fact that we've had a number of these in the last few years of sites, and we've declared them to be unsustainable locations because they are too far from villages or towns, and on a number of occasions that definition has been supported when they've been taken to appeal by the inspectors. I'm not sure that we could apply that here, because it's a 30-minute walk and there is, I believe, a footpath into Shrewsbury. So I think it does become a little bit whether you think it is or whether you think it isn't. So I guess it might come down to an inspector if we choose to reject this on whether it would be considered to be overdevelopment. We do need tourism. Shrewsbury is a tourist town, and a huge amount of income is generated from that for the county. Is it a site of or a valued landscape? I think, given what we've got in Shropshire, perhaps not as much as we'd like to think this particular one is. I'm not sure. I'm in two minds. I mean, I'm inclined to support the officer's recommendation on this, but probably mainly because I think if we kick it out, I'm not sure how we would be able to defend that with an inspector.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt.
There's no other current indications just now, Chair.
Right, okay. Just if nobody else to speak.
Can I, Kelvin Hall, Chair? Can I just
any comments, Kelvin? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, just on the point of the landscape value, I don't think it was the intention of the case officer to suggest that the landscape didn't have any particular value. I think the point was, and it's raised in 6.2.4 of the report, that it's not a designated area of landscape value such as the AONB, and then the officer then goes on to say that the area where the lodges will be located has no particular quality or landscape value which might differentiate it from any other rural or countryside location. That is not to say that it's got a low value or a very low value. It's just that the point is making that it's not designated for its high landscape value. It might still have a medium landscape value as other areas of the county. So it's not intended that it's trying to devalue the value for the local residents of the area that might use it. The other point, that just to pick up on what Councillor Hunt was talking about, the location, I just wanted to draw members' attention to core strategy policy CS16 about tourism and the location here, because we do in other circumstances look unfavourably on tourism ventures which aren't in a sustainable location, and CS16 does say development of a high quality visitor accommodation in accessible locations served by a range of services and facilities which enhances the role of Shropshire as a tourism destination to stay will be supported. And also in rural areas, proposals must be of an appropriate scale and character, be close to or within settlements or an established and viable tourism enterprise. And on this particular occasion, this site ticks all of those boxes, and therefore in terms of sustainability reasons, officers consider that any harm is outweighed by those benefits. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alvin. I do support what you say about tourism in the right locations, such as on the edge of towns and villages with facilities. But there's no more questions to be asked.
Chair, Councillor Hunt has indicated again.
Okay, Councillor Hunt.
It'll be very brief. It's just to say that I wasn't implying it had no value. In fact, quite the opposite. I did say to the people that walk there, it does have value. I get that. What I meant was that it isn't along the lines of the really valued pieces of Shropshire like the AONB. I'm not sure that the inspector, if it ended up going to appeal, would support it being valued enough, given the nature of the green fields of the whole of Shropshire.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Miranda, are there any points you'd like to bring up?
Not at this time, Chair, thank you.
Okay, and nothing else for you, Kelvin?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. If there are no more speakers, please can I have a proposer and seconder?
Yes, Councillor Allcroft, I'll propose that we go ahead and support the officers and give permission for this site to go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Allcroft. Do I have a second for that?
I will second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt.
Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, okay, we have a proposer and seconder. Right, we will now take the vote. The solicitor will read out the names of the committee members in turn. Thank you, Miranda.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I do, can I just confirm that the proposer and seconder take on board the change to the landscaping condition mentioned by the planning officer at the start of his presentation?
Are we happy with that, Councillor Allcroft?
Yes, that's fine by me.
Councillor Hunt?
And Councillor Hunt, fine by me too.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. You've heard the proposal in favour of the officer's recommendation to grant planning consent. I'll read your names out: for or against or abstain. Councillor Aldcroft.
For.
Councillor Bardsley.
Against.
Councillor Dakin.
For.
Councillor Dean.
Against.
Councillor Green.
Against.
Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Mosley.
Against.
Councillor Roberts.
Against.
Councillor Vasma.
Against.
Councillor Wynne.
For. No. Yes.
Chair, that is 5 in favour of the recommendation and 6 against. So that recommendation falls.
Okay, so there, in that case, do we have to have another recommendation? Right.
You do need another proposal, Chair, yes.
Proposal. Okay, can I have another proposal, please?
Thank you, Chair. If I may jump in there.
Sure.
There's Councillor Green. Can we have it on the grounds of overdevelopment, visual impact upon the environment, and noise.
Is that okay, Miranda?
Chair, I think we need some more specifics. So by overdevelopment, we need to expand on what is meant by that, given that you've heard the percentage of the overall site that is actually developed. You know, the question is in what is the harm that is perceived of that, because there does need to be some detail in these if this is a proposed refusal reason.
If we're talking about overdevelopment as a percentage of the entire site, I mean, that's I think that's again in itself is somewhat disingenuous. Maybe if we say that overdevelopment upon the visible ridgeline of the Hencote site.
And what's the harm that is perceived as a result of that, Councillor?
Well, it's one of partly it's visual impact, and the other is one of over. Well, I suppose you'll have to bring in highways because I think there's additional traffic that will be generated.
Oh.
Chair, Councillor Dean is indicating he has some suggestion with regards to the proposed refusal reason.
Okay, Councillor Dean.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm looking at 6.1.4 policy CS16 refers to provided they are appropriate in terms of the location, blah, 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 and do not harm Shropshire's tranquil nature. I certainly think that the couple's retreat being quite close to other homes, I can't see that as being tranquil, to be honest. I think that that's a harm in terms of the tranquil nature of that part of this bit of countryside on the edge of town.
Okay, that's on there.
And Chair, visual impact, in what respect is this just of the site looking at towards the site from other vantage points, or what is the?
Well, I think this is policy CS5, where we would say that it is inappropriate in that I would say it does not enhance the countryside vitality and character, because I cannot see how it's adding to sustainable rural tourism.
I think it's CS5 though. This does actually add to the tourist facilities there? If that's not a visual impact, is it? That you're talking about there? There's no doubt it does increase those tourist facilities in that location. So it's visual impact of the site in its surroundings.
Yes, it is. Yes, it will be the visual impact of the site.
And in terms of noise, you've heard the distance from other properties. What is the noise issue that you are pointing to?
Well, if you think that noise is not sufficient, then maybe we can, perhaps that is not a sufficient reason for doing that. Maybe we'll remove that.
Okay, I was just asking what the sort of evidence in support of that is. Chair, in light of the proposed refusal reason, I'm going to just ask for a brief moment to leave the meeting. If you would like, if you could just pause briefly while I briefly consult with the planning officer in order to be able to advise members appropriately.
Certainly.
Yeah, I can just briefly leave and come back to you.
That would be helpful. Thank you. Sorry about the pause, everybody. It's very difficult to get good planning reasons in place when you don't feel it's right. Been there, done that. It's very awkward sometimes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm back. Kelvin Hall is back now.
Okay, hi.
Are we just waiting for Miranda to return now?
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Because she's finished speaking with me, so maybe she's having problems returning to the meeting.
Possibly. She might be speaking to somebody else, possibly. Give her a couple of minutes. Oh, I have to.
Hello, Chair. Miranda Garrard speaking. Rejoined the meeting. Sorry about the slight delay there.
That's okay.
Thank you, Chair. I've discussed the matter with the planning officer. We have the proposed reasons for refusal, which firstly, overdevelopment affecting the tranquil nature of the location and taking into account also highways impact. It is the view of myself and the planning officer that there are some difficulties with defending that reason because of the fact that it actually is a relatively busy area in the vicinity in terms of its location, quite close to a relatively busy road, and also the visual impact reason, that is the proposed reason. It would be glimpsed views, it's felt, and that there is a landscaping condition which would also mitigate that. And so if those proposed reasons are supported by committee members, the advice is that this would trigger a deferral of the item for a further report on those proposed reasons to come back before committee on the basis of concern regarding defending those reasons.
Right, okay, so do we take another vote or do we refer it now?
Chair, you'd need to have a vote on that because it's if members are minded to. We don't obviously know if members would vote in favour of that at this stage, but if they are minded to support that, those proposed reasons for refusal, it would then stand deferred based on the advice from myself and the planning officer.
Okay, so there's no need. So I'm going back to Nat Green now.
So you would need a vote, Chair, if you've got that, if that's what the proposer is putting forward.
Okay, so I'll still go back to Nat Green, so I need a new proposal, don't I?
As it stands, you have a proposal, Chair. You can ask Councillor Green if he wishes to add or amend that proposal, but as it stands, there is a proposal.
There is a proposal, okay. Councillor Green, have you got any amendments to your proposal?
Yes, in the sense that we can add contrary to MD11 as it stands, which is the requires proposals to be well screen sighted to mitigate the impact on the visual quality of the area.
Okay.
This is for refusal.
That's right.
Yeah.
And as I understand from the solicitor, that what happens is that if we vote on that to vote to refuse, then it is deferred, automatically deferred. Is that as I understand it?
That's how I understand it as well, Nat. That's correct, isn't it? So it'll be deferred if it falls. If the proposal goes ahead, I mean.
If the proposal stands.
Chair, Councillor Vasmer's indicating to speak.
Okay, Councillor Vasmer.
Yes, just an additional. If you look at SAMDEV MD 11.6, that would support the objection of overdevelopment, because it talks about over-intensification of a site.
Within 80 acres. Well, okay. What do you feel about that, Miranda?
I think that point has been made already, Chair. It is correct that MD 11.6 does say that proposals for new and extended, well, this actually talks about touring caravan and camping sites, actually, and that, so therefore MD 11.6 isn't applicable, because this isn't a touring caravan or camping site. We're talking about log cabins, which is MD 11.7.
Right. So we can't use that one. Okay. So any more changes to your proposal? Otherwise, we'll have to take a vote on it, and then it will be deferred.
Okay.
Okay. Right. We have the proposal there still. So now, Miranda, we take another vote on it, and if it's still is up for refusal, it is deferred by yourself. Yes.
That's right, Chair. You wish me to put this to the vote now?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If the proposal's happy with that.
Members, you've heard, and have we got a seconder for this? We have for this proposal, Chair.
Last time, sorry, I can't remember.
Well, the first proposal was seconded by Councillor Hunt, but that was a proposal 4. This is a proposal by Councillor Green.
Okay, do I have a seconder for Councillor Green's proposal?
I'll second that, Councillor Vasma.
Thank you, Councillor Vasma. Yeah, we have a seconder now.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you have heard the proposal to refuse this development on the basis of overdevelopment, affecting the tranquility of the area, it being contrary to MD 11 of SAMDEV, and also the impact of the visual amenity of the area, and it is being inappropriate because it doesn't enhance the countryside vitality and character. Please indicate if you're in favour of that refusal or against it. I will read your names out now. Councillor Aldcroft.
Against.
Councillor Bardsley.
For.
Councillor Dakin.
Against.
Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Green.
For.
Councillor Hunt.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
Against.
Councillor Mosley.
For.
I beg your pardon, Chair. Can I just rerun that again, just to get a correct note of this? Please accept my apologies.
Okay, yeah.
But Councillor Aldcroft, are you for or against the recommendation?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Bardsley.
For.
Councillor Dakin.
Against.
Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Green.
For.
Councillor Hunt.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
Against.
Councillor Mosley.
For.
Councillor Roberts.
For.
Councillor Vasma.
For.
Councillor Wynne.
Against.
Councillor, that is 6 in favour of that recommendation and 5 against, so that is carried, but as indicated previously, that will now stand deferred to a future meeting to advise further on the proposed reasons for refusal.
Hang on a sec. Right, did everybody hear that clearly?
What, the duck?
Oh, somebody's got something going on there. Right. So did everybody hear that clearly? If not, could you indicate? Otherwise, it'll be deferred to come back to us again.
Chair, through you, it might be just helpful if I just indicate for the benefit of the any of the public listening to this that there is a provision within the council's constitution in terms of dealing with planning matters, that if the representatives of the legal officers and planning officers feel that a proposal may not be defensible, then if they so advise before the vote, if that proposed vote then stands deferred to a future meeting, and that is the procedure that has been triggered in this particular case.
Thank you for that, Miranda. Make it a lot clearer to the public. Okay, so that has been dealt with now. It's coming back to us. So where are we now? So that's been okay. So we understand that it's been deferred for us to see if they can get the reasons any stronger, to see if they can defend it. Okay. So next one. So now we're on to item 7 then. Appeals and appeal decisions. Does the planning officer and solicitor wish to make any comments on the appeals?
None from me, Chair.
Okay. Philip, Kelvin?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Do any members wish to comment on the appeals? Otherwise, we can note them. Okay, I don't have any comments. No comments. Okay. Item 9, date of the next meeting. To note that the next meeting of the Northern Planning Committee will be held 2 p.m. on Tuesday, 12th of January 2021. That concludes the agenda. I will now close the meeting and ask the committee office to end the live event.